is Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm John.
And I'm Richard.
How about that snazzy little intro there, Richard? Do you like that? Oh, dun dun
Uh,
dun.
yeah, our special effects budget just got doubled.
Yes, because believe it or not, this is officially our first episode of our fourth year. 4 years doing this show. No, 3 years. We're in our fourth year. Time is meaningless now, Richard. It's elastic. It is a concept I cannot wrap my mind around.
I never would have thought we would be doing this still. We started the show because we were stuck in the middle of a pandemic and we were bored and we were talking about comics anyway, and the idea for the podcast came up and it was just something for us to do. And it's turned into something it's been real fun, and I really enjoyed the past 3 years. I'm looking forward to the next.
It was literally, let's just record our conversations and throw it on the internet because we're infinitely entertained by ourselves,
Yes.
which is, I don't know, ego wise what that says or what that means, but we figure if we like it, you guys will too. We thank you guys all very much, and if you're new around here, welcome. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods. And as always, help us out by clicking like and subscribing if you have not already. Let's get our fourth year underway with a big topic that everybody's talking about this week. And if you listen to this show, you know we talk about it endlessly. It doesn't seem to stop. That is CGC. More changes at CGC, Richard.
Yeah, I know. We're going to have to talk about it.
But first, we've got all our regular topics like 25-year rule this week. We've got our underrated books of the week. But first, our hot book of the week, Richard. You had never heard of this when I mentioned it to you.
I did not. I had to go out and find it and read it. It's Hedge Knight #1.
This is an Image comic book from 2003, those bygone days of 20 years ago. What? That adapts George R.R. Martin's Hedge Knight. This book takes place 100 years before the first Game of Thrones book. Are you a Game of Thrones dude?
I am not. I couldn't get through the first season. They killed off my favorite character and I never went back.
Spoilers. If we, there's nothing you guys want more than two people who are really fully informed about this telling you about it. I just know this book, Hedge Knight #1, is the first appearance of Dunk and Egg. That means something to people, I'm sure. What really means something to people is that HBO has ordered an adaptation of this for a new series, and why wouldn't they? Game of Thrones was probably the biggest HBO show ever. Here's the good news for collectors that have this book, Richard. Only 13,876 copies of this were ordered by retailers.
Right. That's a nice low number. So most people are not going to have this hiding in their collection.
There are, believe it or not, for 2003, this is a big number, 3 variant covers for this book. There is a variant cover B right here on the screen right now. There was also an incentive cover, quote unquote. I have no idea. I did lots of research. I could not find out what you had to do to get this book, if you had to order a certain number of copies or whatever. So if anybody knows, tell us in the comments. And a convention special cover that was limited to 1,500 copies. That's this bad boy right here. Now, do you know why I knew this book was going to be something this week, Richard?
Why, John?
My sisters, plural, are the biggest Game of Thrones fans. And they posted about this on Facebook. And for some reason, whatever news story they referenced and linked to had a picture of this comic book as the image. So I don't know why whatever news source picked this to do it. And I was like, oh, this book is going to be hot. And sure enough, I started looking and it has exploded. Raws are selling for about $35 to $70 on eBay right now. Wow. So the buy-in is already increasing very quickly on this.
I've read it. The artwork is good. The story is good. I mean, as a comic, I think it carries. It's definitely going to be a hot book here in the short term until the show starts to air, and potentially after.
Here's the thing about George R.R. Martin, big comic book guy. He had multiple letters published in the Silver Age Marvels. He wrote into early.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So this guy knows his audience, and I'm so glad that a fellow nerd, geek, whatever you want to call him, is making coin. Get that coin, George.
Trust me, George has enough coin at this point.
I want to see him like in an Uncle Scrooge situation where he's swan diving into his basement full of gold bullion.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's got J.K. Rowling's kind of coin at this point.
Good for him. Good for him. So pick that up if you have a chance. If you want it, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you really should. We have an update on something that we have talked about several times on the show, as recently as last week. Richard's quest for the Miracle Man UK version of issue number 1. Richard, you got a message from a loyal viewer this week.
Yes, I did. I had been on the hunt for a UK version of Miracle Man #1. Only about 1,600 copies were printed. You can tell it because the back cover has a yellow advertisement, while the regular print has a Zot advertisement on, full color ad on the back. I thought I had one. Turns out it was mislabeled by CGC, so I'm back on the hunt. And our friend Second Best Bob posted that he has a copy, and not only does he have a copy, but his copy actually has a signature in it. It has a signature from Alan Moore. Now, I have a book that is signed by Alan Moore. I have the Miracle Man #1 gold edition, which are 400 copies of. And so I took a picture of, I have a picture of my signature from Alan Moore, and he sent a picture of his, and they match up to me. So he's got a copy of the UK version, which is again limited to 1,600, signed by Alan Moore, who is notorious for not signing books. So I think it's a great collector's item. I hope you get it slabbed and keep it for a good long time.
The most important thing here is what I'm showing on the screen right now, the yellow back cover,
Right.
which it does exist. Here it is. And it is a legit UK edition and signed by Alan Moore. I think Bob said he got it signed at a shop and he barely remembers having it. I love those things when you find things in your collection like I forgot I had this Marvel Comics #1 signed by Bill Everett.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So
So
thanks for reaching out and giving us an update. We really appreciate it.
thanks, Bob. Time for the main topic of the week that everybody's talking about. Every YouTube channel this week's already covered this. I feel like we're Johnny come latelys because we do one show a week because of our schedules. CGC, big changes again at CGC. Let's just take them down. You guys saw the email if you are on the CGC mailing list. Starting May 2nd, price changes go into effect. A little good, a little bad. More on the bad, I think. Go ahead, Richard. Go over the price changes.
We have the modern tier going from $24 to $25.
Outrageous! How dare they?
The economy tier now becomes something called vintage, and it goes from 35 to 37. Standard becomes high value. It goes from $80 to 85. They are completely doing away with the express tier. Now, express tier used to be valued up to $3,000. You can get a book submitted, and you would get it back rapidly. I mean, it wasn't as fast as walkthrough, but it was pretty darn fast. The walkthrough tier becomes now unlimited, and it goes from 3% of the value of the book to 4% with a minimum of $150. Pre-screen goes from $8 to $9. The only positive is there's no longer a minimum. It used to be a 25 book minimum. They've eliminated that. Magazine prices, standard goes from 32 to 25. So it actually drops for the
I
magazine.
love that because I have a stack of magazines.
I do too. I don't know if the turnaround time is going to be as long as it has in the past. So, um, the magazine economy becomes vintage, and it goes from $42 to 37. Magazine standard is high value, and there's no change in that. And the walkthrough becomes unlimited, and it also goes from 3% to 4%. So the price changes aren't that dramatic, uh, especially for the most what is going to affect most people, which is modern and an economy. I don't think there's so much difference. Is it really a good time to be instituting price changes with the market as depressed as it is? I'm hesitant to think so.
I think A equals B. I think you just answered your own question. The market's so depressed that they've got to make money somehow, and this is a quick, incremental way to get the revenue numbers up. And remember, they're reporting to a corporate overlord now, if I can get that out, that wants growth every quarter. It does not want to see flat uh, revenue numbers. It doesn't want to see stagnant revenue numbers. So this is always the quickest way to show some sort of growth, especially when submission volume might be down. But this is all speculation. We don't know submission volume is down.
That's true.
We
We have
don't
no.
know that. I think some of these changes, just the cosmetic changes, are well overdue. Express has not been Express for 2 years now.
Right.
I mean, how many times have we talked about that on the show? Do they listen? Uh, I don't think they do, but Express has not been. I still have an Edge of Spider-Verse #2 in Express grading and encapsulation for week #3 now, still sitting there. All of my other submissions from WonderCon are shipped or back in the house, except for my Express submission, which is kind of dumb. Don't call it Express anymore.
Right.
I do like vintage instead of economy because that is what it is. It's books from before 1975. High value is just what it says on the tin. I don't agree or I don't disagree with that. What do you think about these cosmetic changes?
Yeah, I don't I think they're fine. I don't have any strong opinion that it's going to make a difference in um, how I interact with CGC. My annual subscription literally just got renewed this week, so I have another $150 to play with. I'll be submitting, before these changes go in place. But even if it wasn't, eh, a dollar here or there isn't going to make a huge difference.
That's what they're hoping you say.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm hoping that we see the continued reduction in turnaround time. I want if we're getting rid of economy, I'm sorry, if we're getting rid of express, and as you mentioned, it's justified. I want to get the high value turnaround time to be a reasonable amount. I want the unlimited turnaround time to go back to a week like it used to be. It used to be 3 to 5 days, and you had bam, your book was shipped and on its way back to you. Those changes, those kinds of things would be more impactful to me and will make the change in price not as important. So we'll see. Once May 2nd hits and we have some real data on the turnaround times, I will either be impressed or just nonplussed.
If I'm paying for walkthrough, am I getting walkthrough?
Right, right.
Am I getting 3-day white glove service? I better. I'm paying for it. Nothing in your email and your announcement says that the turnaround time for walkthrough is changing because of this. So there's that. I am really taking advantage of the magazine
Yeah,
stuff because I literally have a little stack of magazines that Fugitoid #1, a Savage Sword of Conan #1 that I think is a 9.8, that an Epic #1 that I just had sitting here for literally years because I just didn't want to wait a year and pay, $42 to get it slabbed. Now I'm like, okay, $5 savings for each one, and it's going to take 6 months or so. Why not? I am going to submit a lot more magazines.
same here. I've got a Teenage Mutant Turtles #1 second print that I've just sat on because I didn't want to ship it and not see it again for 240 days. So if the turnaround times are reasonable and I can ship it out and get it back in around the same time I would get a modern book, that would be amazing. That would be an incredible change.
I think we can jump ahead of all of you in the chat and the comments and say we're not stopping submitting because of this.
Right,
I
right.
mean, it would be disingenuous for us to feign outrage and be like, "How dare they raise that price by $1?" Richard and I, we know each other. We're going to do this.
Yeah, it's like raising the price of gas. You grumble about it, but what are you going to do? You still got to go driving. And, you know, re- regardless of the competition, CGC is still the premier grading company, and it's still CGC books have a premium in their value, and therefore, if you're looking to sell books, or even if you're looking to keep a book and in the future potentially selling it, it really means getting your books graded by CGC.
Let's give them credit. The improvements. There have been massive improvements in turnaround times. I mean, that modern submission that I dropped off at WonderCon was back to me in less than 2 weeks.
That's wonderful.
It
Yeah.
was crazy. I do have issues with Express. My only issue was the nomenclature, and they've fixed that now, so it's no longer called Express.
Oh, another point, they changed CCS, which was their pressing service, has now been rebranded as CGC Pressing. They're trying to have a unified branding, which makes sense to me. Why it was a separate brand was beyond me. I'm wondering how that's going to affect. Is it just simply a cosmetic change? Are they making some kind of systemic improvement that we're going to see turnaround times from their pressing arm reduced? Because that's, I've never considered even using the pressing because of the turnaround time was just unbelievable.
Or are they actually going to start pressing the books instead of saying they did?
That too. That too.
You have a great joke here that I can't believe you missed. I'm giving you the opportunity to. You wrote this joke and you didn't use it.
Yeah, I have BFD after after the
CCS is now CGC BFD.
name.
I thought that was
Uh,
great.
oh yeah, I'm funny sometimes. I just don't take advantage of it.
Sometimes you were due. So what do you guys think? CGC changes. I mean, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it because I think other channels got there earlier and covered it pretty in depth, maybe better than we can. We are not sponsored by CGC in any way. We do not get a kickback by them in any way. So we have no problem giving our unvarnished opinions. But I don't know. It seems like business as usual for me.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Verbose as always, Richard.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know what to do here because everyone's getting on me about my segues, and I'm just going to toss it over to you, Richard. Why don't you try it, mister? You come up with the segue off the top of your head.
Well, you know, gosh,
It's
off the
not
top
that
of my
easy,
head,
is it?
it's not that easy. No, let's just
Ladies and
say
gentlemen, it's
it's
the
time.
25-year rule. It is what it is.
It is.
25-year rule. It's when we go back 25 years when nostalgia kicks in, when you get older and you want to go back and reclaim your childhood. That usually happens around the 25-year mark, hence the 25-year rule. Back to 1998 and the slow, prolonged death rattle of Valiant Comics. Shadow Man number 20 is what we're talking about today. By 1998, Valiant Comics, as we knew it, was no more, replaced by Acclaim. The video game company bought Valiant with big plans to take this IP and make it into big video games. Had a little success with Turok Dinosaur Hunter, I think, for the Sega Genesis. But, the comics were not moving like they used to. Sales were down, books were getting canceled left and right. This was the final issue for this run of Shadow Man, who, by the way, looking at this cover, looks nothing like the Shadow Man I grew up with and know and love. I have no idea what this is. But check it out, Richard. The cover is by Clayton Crane. No
Wow.
acetate whatsoever on this cover.
Oh, so no controversy is what you're saying.
Hide your wives. Crane also drew the interior. Sorry. Did that
Oh,
come out?
sorry. It took a second for me to get that, but yeah.
It slipped out, didn't it? Orders were down to around 8,000 or 9,000 copies for this book around this point. So there aren't a lot of these out there. If you're a Clayton Crane fan, you're married, and you really want to collect his stuff, show how much you love him. This is scarce. Raws on eBay fetch around $5 to $20. So it does command a premium. If you find them out there, grab them. You can get them cheap. Acclaim would indeed reboot Shadow Man one last time for a volume 3, but that only ran for 4 issues. So Acclaim, Valiant didn't die a swift death. It was death by 1,000 cuts. By the year 2001, it was no more. You never got into Valiant, did you?
No, I didn't.
At all? Not even in the shooter era, huh?
No, no. I disappeared from the comic scene around the let's say early 90s. It didn't come back until around the 2000s. So there's a whole gap in my experience for comics.
Yeah, I can see that. You had to be there, I think. Those of us that were there at the very beginning of Valiant have great affection for these characters, and it was really sad to see how mismanaged and just underutilized all these IPs were. And Valiant's still around; these characters are still around. I couldn't give a crap. I tried reading them; they were unreadable,
What
awful,
really?
awful, bad idea. Hey, let's move on to our underrated books of the week. Richard, you were still collecting comics when this came out.
Yes, I was. I am not only I am a huge nerd. My daughter calls me a nerd, and I say yes. I proclaim myself proudly as a nerd. I have made a career out of geeky stuff. One of the things that I used to do is play the tabletop games, miniature games, board games. BattleTech was one of the game systems back in the late 80s. BattleTech number one from 1987 was the first appearance of the BattleTech universe in comic books. It was owned at the time by FASA, FASA, and they were this clearinghouse for all these different IPs. They had the BattleTech IP, they had the Star Wars IP, they had the Star Trek IP, and they made role-playing games and board games around those properties, which I find amazing that this small independent company had access to all these universes. The BattleTech universe is all about giant mechs and the people who pilot them, and it has a huge, rich backstory with a whole series of books, computer games. They're still coming out nowadays. If you played Mech Warrior 5, that's out there right now. They also had these pods. I remember back in it was the late early 80s, early 90s in Chicago. I went out to Chicago, and you actually get into this cockpit of this, and it's this capsule. You get in, and you're in the cockpit of this giant mech, and there's hundreds of buttons that control different facets of the mech, and this big screen in front of you, and you've got two joysticks, and you're piloting this mech, you and five of your friends, and you would fight it out. It cost like $15 every time you did it, but it was amazing. It was you have this real sense of being a part of that universe. So definitely was a popular thing. This book is still available on eBay for about $10. It's for a raw. If you have that sentimental feeling about that era of the 80s, if you played any of the board games or read any of the books, this will be a great bout of nostalgia for you.
I I didn't recognize this when I saw it in the show notes, and then I saw the cover, and boy, it was like a memory grenade went off in my head. I was like, "Oh, I totally remember this now." I never played it, but I do remember seeing the game around and going to the hobby stores and seeing all the modules and things like that, and seeing this cover, Blackthorn,
Yeah.
one of those little companies that just would throw anything out there. GI Joe in 3D, sure. Uh, I'm not surprised. Blackthorn, they're kind of like FASA, and they would just grab any IP and just throw it out there. And here it is.
Yeah, and if you have any of those books, any of those old books, you may want to go looking for them, because some of those books are worth $400 to $500 nowadays for collectors, because the print runs are pretty sparse, and there's a lot of nostalgia around it. So go out and look in your garage and see what you have.
Are they modules or are they actual like hardback books?
They are not hardback. They are actually they're like a graphic novel in their print style.
Get them slabbed in the new magazine tier and save $5. That's called a throwback, people. My underrated book this week is Invaders number 31. And when you see this cover, you can't resist it. This is the Timely Comics World War II group of Cap, Submariner, the original Human Torch, battling Frankenstein's monster, who is nattily attired in a full Nazi uniform. Yes, it's Nazi Frankenstein versus the invaders.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Of course. Now I can get pedantic about the cover referring to the monster as just Frankenstein, not Frankenstein's monster, but I won't. We'll just chalk that up to creative license. Invaders, started out strong. You had Roy Thomas writing it. You had Frank Robbins, love him or hate him. He was kind of perfect for this book. But it was kind of running on fumes at this point. It was being drawn by Alan Cooperberg. If anyone can make you miss Frank Robbins, Alan's going to raise his hand and throw his weight in there. This issue was actually a fill-in written by Don Glut and drawn by Chick Stone. This crazy cover, it's insane. It does command a bit of a premium. Raw, very fine-ish copies sell for about $15 regularly on eBay, but a high-grade CGC 9.8 sold in December for $360. And I have this book. It's got some dinged corners. It's well loved because I read it. Who can resist Nazi Frankenstein?
Not me.
I did not see that coming.
Oh, it's a dad joke.
Well, short and sweet. You guys had it good the last couple of weeks. No complaining. Richard, remind everybody where they can find us.
They can find us at Bronze and Modern Gods on Facebook and Instagram, or the website, bronzeandmoderngods.com.
Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate each and every one of you, and we will see you next time.
Everybody, stay safe.